Welcome to the Obesity Medicine Podcast with your host, Dr. Rentea, board certified in internal medicine and obesity medicine. Here, we talk about a path to metabolic health, and we have real conversations about chronic weight management and living a full life. Just a reminder, I am a physician, but I'm not your physician. So everything that's on this podcast is for informational purposes, but please go talk to your doctor about what's right for you. There is no medical advice being given on this podcast. Okay, welcome back to a really special episode. We are actually doing something today that we have not done before, which is a dual episode. So I'm Dr. Rentea. We have Dr. Mercado-Marmarosh, and we are going to be talking today a lot about ADHD, the brain, how this relates to food, GLP-1 use. This is something that I don't know about you. I'm going to have you introduce yourself fully as well, so everyone knows, we'll both do introductions, but I don't see this episode being talked about anywhere. Have you seen this where people are talking about this intersection at all?
Nope. This is why I think this episode's going to be dynamite.
So can we start by you introducing yourself, and then I'll introduce myself just so people know both of us, and we kind of have a plan for today, but we'll see where the conversation goes.
Amazing. I'm Dr. Diana Mercado-Marmarosh. I'm a family medicine physician, and I'm also an ADHD life coach for healthcare professionals, especially physicians. 3-4 years ago, you would have never heard me talking to anybody about my ADHD because I thought it was like something that I needed to kept under the closet, because if people found out, all of a sudden they would realize that I wasn't meant to be a physician because, quote unquote, I didn't have my shit together. Little did I know that embracing my ADHD was actually the best thing that I could have done for myself and for those around me, because then it gets you to realize that you're not broken. You just think a little bit differently. And in thinking a little bit different, you tap into that creativity, and it allows you to create systems that support you instead of always feeling like you're having to work against yourself and your tendencies. And so that's who I am, and I'm super excited to be here. I am a mom. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old. I love to travel. So anytime I'm not working, I am on a plane somewhere. So that's probably that ADHD wanting to explore and eat up the whole world, right? So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I got chills when you were describing how you're like, I wouldn't have talked about this because I thought this meant, that I wasn't a top physician, all these things. And I was thinking about how many parallels there are between your story and my story, but mine is more with obesity medicine. So if anyone on your podcast is new to me, I'm Dr. Rentea. I'm a board certified internal medicine and obesity medicine physician. And I years ago started my own clinic because I realized there was really a gap with people fully helping with weight management, not sort of blaming and shaming and just saying, this calorie number or this medication, but kind of bringing everything together. And it's really interesting what you talk about, because the fact that I've had such a big struggle with my weight, I always thought, well, does that mean that I'm qualified to talk about this? What I realized is very much so, because I understand what everyone's going through. And we actually, to give everybody context here, we met at a conference a few months ago, feels like years ago at this point. But I just was talking to you there and I realized, oh my gosh, so much of this, what we call executive functioning, and so many of the things you were talking about, we just need to talk about it. And I'll tell you, I mentioned this a little bit at the conference, but about 60% of my patients have either ADD or ADHD. And so there's this huge overlap between if we're having trouble with emotional eating, impulse control, like all the different names, however you want to give it, sometimes the brain just processes things differently. And so I really knew that this is a conversation I wanted to definitely to have with you. So I'm wondering if we can just start with, if someone is neurodivergent, they have ADHD or any other type of, different ways of processing things, how, have you seen it get missed that someone has ADHD? Like, are there things that people are not aware of?
Yes. Females tend to kind of be missed. If you're lucky to get the diagnosis as a kid, it's going to be labeled for a boy, because boys tend to have the tendency of being hyperactive. Females tend to be more inattentive. And so the hyperactivity, you can't miss the kid in the back of the room screaming, jumping, and but you'll miss the little girl who's shy or gets labeled as such, unaware that she's daydreaming or using that creativity, which then causes her to become inattentive. And so you might miss her because we just labeled her as shy, or she's doing okay, she's not struggling too much. It's not as obvious. And so it could be, and a lot of people have this misconception that ADHD equals dumb, or ADHD equals not smart, or ADHD equals lazy. It's not that, because whatever you are kind of passionate about, you will do despite how much it takes you to do it. And so let's say you are like me who love to learn, right? So you might get missed if you love to learn because you're going to do all your work quickly, but then I did have that hyperactivity, but I still got missed because I got labeled as chiflada, meaning like I was just too spoiled, right? And so so instead of getting help, I got labeled as spoiled. And I mean, it took my parents to come and sit there for me to try to behave like I behaved out of trauma, or out of fear of like
Yeah.
getting my butt whipped, right? But
Yeah.
again, like because I was quote unquote smart, I just get promoted into the following grades and following grades and following grades. And so it kind of got missed. And then later on, you get into activities where then you get missed. You just get so used to not overthinking or doing things. And so what I'm trying to get at is females are gonna get missed if they tend to be type A perfectionist because they're gonna lean into that as a defense mechanism, unaware that they're using that as a defense mechanism because they have this fear of failure in the background, or they don't want to let their family down, and if you're like me, who's a first immigrant, right, going through the whole school system in the US, you don't know how much or how long something is supposed to take. And so you do whatever it takes because we have been told it's a privilege to go through this education and you need to do this despite of, or you're letting the whole family down, right? And so you have all these other beliefs that are there that prevent you from looking at, is my kid being naughty, or is my kid have a neurological condition that, of course, they don't want to disappoint the teacher, the parent, everybody else, but we have not given them that chance to see if there's something else because maybe it's not talked about in your culture, or because maybe you don't have the resources, or even if you do get the diagnosis, people still have that like shame, like I did, right, of being labeled as something. And people sometimes have misconceptions, like they're like, oh, they're gonna get addicted to that med, and they don't realize, or they took that med, it didn't work long enough. It's not antibiotics. You're not just gonna take it for a few days and all of a sudden expect for it to be ready, right? And the same thing, like how, I don't want to say dumb, but it is dumb. How dumb is it to say, okay, my kid had diabetes and he took the med for like a month and now he's an adult and he shouldn't have diabetes because he took the med for a month. Like it doesn't go together, right?
Yeah, it's like the
So
logic isn't there. And you know what I would see a lot of in my primary care practice? I would see a lot of anxiety with women. So again, they were getting diagnosed usually around like 40 years old, 30, 40. And like you said, they were so overcompensating with perfectionism and trying to like hold these systems together. And their whole lives would be changed when things would be managed appropriately. But like you said, it was just when you looked back, you could see all of it based on what you're saying. But again, just this sort of mislabeling things. So what are challenges that people with, we're just gonna stick with ADHD, that they typically have? Like I hear the term, timeline thrown around, things like that. But can you just go through the top maybe one, two, three, or just some common things that you encounter with this?
yes. So most of the people have heard the word impulsivity, hyperactivity, inattentiveness. We have heard those, right? And everybody's like, okay,
Right.
those are what you need. But people are not aware that executive function, those are just 3 of 12 that people with ADHD have. And
Oh,
one of them that is really important, that is not really looked into, especially in the US, but in the other side of the world, in Europe, it is needed to make the diagnosis of ADHD, is emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is the ability for us to manage our emotions. It sounds simple enough, right? But when you don't realize that how you react and how you show up in the world is linked to not having the right tools to process how much thinking you're needing to do at that time, all of a sudden you get diagnosed as unprofessional, or this kid is just having a tantrum, or irritable, right? And so emotional regulation is something that you need to be aware. And then this time blindness, people don't realize that people with ADHD literally have 30 to 40% misinterpretation of the time. So what you might think takes you an hour might actually take you an hour and a half, and you're not even aware that it takes you an hour and a half because you don't have that insight. And therefore, that shows up as not being organized, because if you're missing a meeting because you didn't time your stuff correctly, because most of us with ADHD, we'll tell you how long it takes for the actual thing to happen, but we won't tell you how long is it going to take to get your supplies to make the thing happen, or how long is it going to be for you to drive to get to the thing. It's not when you sit down. We forget all the stuff before, like, oh, the train got in the way. Oh, I didn't have gas. I still had to stop and put the gas. Like all this other stuff that causes you to have this time blindness, and you show up late and you look like you don't care, or is disrespectful to the other people, or if you are there, again, due to some of the other executive functions being there in the background, you might speak out of turn. You might not sit there long enough for them to say the whole thing that they needed to, and you look like you're being rude. You showed up late and you're interrupting them. They can't even get through their stuff, right? And so this time blindness, if you're not aware that that's a thing, then you can't really use strategies because you don't know that there's strategies for you to implement so that you're not as late, or decide, can I just rearrange my schedule around so that in the morning I'm not trying to put the trash out plus the thing, like could I have done that the night before so that I don't get myself late? Like sometimes it's pre-planning again, but that's pre-planning is another executive function. So if you don't realize that planning, organization, task switching, all those are all executive functions. So if you don't realize that, then it gets us all a little bit of trouble, and we internalize that we have a character flaw instead of realizing, okay, I just don't have this handle of what 5 minutes or 45 minutes means. I'm not trying to, be bad on purpose. I just really don't have that internal awareness. And even if I did, I'm still 30% off compared to somebody who doesn't have ADHD.
Okay, everything you're saying, again, I'm just thinking about the type of characteristic differences that I see when patients come in with ADD or ADHD. It's 100% what you're talking about. And I think honestly, I haven't always known all the correct terms. When you just start to have like pattern recognition, you start to be like, this is always the challenge, and here's our answer. And so one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the podcast is because number one, I always want to learn, right? But what I'm wondering is, are there any sort of like top, like just practical solutions that you offer to people? Like, I know in your course, we'll talk about this at the end, because I feel like so many physicians are going to want to do that just to really like learn a lot of these strategies. But by the way, what's the name of your course? Because it always really impresses me, like the full name.
Yeah. So it's creating aligned systems to leave work at work. So
I
that
love
way
that. Okay.
they can leave the stuff at work and they can be functioning at home, right?
Totally. But one of the things, so walk me through, what are some strategies that people can do? Like if they're listening and they're like, yes, they know they have ADHD. What are maybe 1, 2, 3 things that you kind of recommend to people as maybe easy starting places or things that they can kind of implement if they're like, yes, I identify with a lot of this?
Yeah. And so what I'm about to share, you don't have to have ADHD to implement. So even if you don't have ADHD, listen up, because this still applies, because I have had physicians, 20% of the people that go through my course don't even have ADHD, and they apply everything that I'm saying. And they're like, oh my God, I finally have a weekend off. I hadn't had one in 15 years, right?
By the way,
So
I'm glad you bring this up, because everything you said, I was like, but I like all of this. So I'm glad you like brought that up.
yeah, because we live in such a culture that we are being asked to do so many things at one time. We all kind of feel like, man, I might have ADHD. And if any of this applies, please go check it out. You might. but you might not. You might just have like anxiety that's not managed well, or you're not sleeping well, or you have hypothyroidism or hypothyroidism. Like you might have other stuff going on. I don't want to pretend like ADHD everybody fits, but if some of this, just be curious and see what if you have never even thought about it. But okay, so top three things that they should do. Okay, we just talked about missing meetings. I know we all, when we talk about planning, we all like want to run the other way because we're like, I don't want to plan because how much effort does it take to actually slow down, open a calendar, put it somewhere? And some of us, again, with a type A perfectionist tendencies, we want to map out every 5 minutes what we're doing. And again, we don't have that ability, or we purposely don't put that task switching buffer time in there. So then we're never running on time and we feel defeated without even starting. So, planning. It's always easier to look ahead than to try to make everything happen like that day. Like, so if on purpose, you could be like, okay, I want to do an oil change in 1 month from now. If you put it on your calendar, it might be easier for you to be able to call the dealership like 3 weeks. And you don't have to call right there and then. You could put it in your calendar 1 month from now, 3 months from now, I'm going to make the actual phone call. It might be easier for you to accomplish versus if you call that morning and be like, oh my God, I'm negative 2,000, right? Like, I'm overdue. Can you bring me in today? Like, they're going to probably tell you no, right? And so then you're pissed off. And so the more that you can at least, and for every 1 minute that you spend planning, it's like 30 minutes to an hour that you'll save that week. I know it sounds silly, but it really
No, I
is.
love that.
It
I
really
love
is
that.
that much because if you're thinking ahead, then you might pay your credit card. Then you're not calling to ask to reverse the fee or all this other stuff that we pay in time, right? Like calling. How long do you wait when you're waiting to call? Like 20 minutes for them to pick up the phone. Like how much time do you, like we spend so much time, right? Or like, let's say you wanted to go to a conference or you wanted to just go on vacation and you haven't booked the flights. Like if you at least book the flights 3 months out, you don't even have to book a whole year. 3 months out, you get the best seats, you get the best deal, and it's the perfect spot. We book on a Wednesday. That's usually when it's the lowest. I'm telling you for that side note. Okay. Anyways, going back to planning is key. So anytime you can give yourself 3 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the morning to just start your day, what am I gonna do today? Like, what is my intention? Because if you start driving without knowing where you're going, where are you going to go? Some people don't want to slow down to put the destination in the GPS, but then they drive around endlessly. And believe me, you'll do everything else that everybody else wants you to do because that's how our brain works. We tend to turn off all the fires, but you never did what you needed to do, what you thought you wanted. And then you're
Right.
exhausted at the end of the day, feeling like you didn't do anything because you didn't even know what you needed to do. And you did everything else for everybody else because we have a problem saying no sometimes. So planning, planning.
Yeah.
One hack. Two, I just told you about this time blindness.
Yeah.
So buffer in some extra time in between your things. Like even if you don't want to plan everything, I say use a timer. Like your timer has to become your best friend. Using a timer to initiate, like it can break that task initiation. Like if you just say 3, 2, 1, start, like we all jump into action when we count down instead of counting up. So put a timer, put it for 5 minutes. All of a sudden, when you started a task that we were putting off, it's a lot easier to stop at 5 minutes, but it's a lot easier to pick it up later because guess what? You already started the task, right? You started the task. So that kinetic energy has been transformed. Like you're already doing it. And all of us will tell you that once we start something that we were dreading, we always say, oh my God, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Like again, but if you have this emotional dysregulation that is telling you, okay, last time I did it, I sat there for 8 hours. It was painful. Why would you want to put yourself through something like that, charting, right? Laundry, like dishes, right? Why would you want to put yourself through that if you feel it's painful? But if you have on purpose used a timer, and if timer is not your thing for you, set up your playlist, like 2 or 3 of your favorite songs. I can do this for 2 songs, or like that's how I do my dishes. Like I put on Shakira on the background, and I'm like, I'm gonna listen to Shakira for 2 songs, and whatever I put in the dishwasher, I put it the next, and then I'll do it next time whenever I feel like it. Like because that to me that's boring. Like why do I have to do that, right? And so if I can find a way to make it a little bit more fun, a game, beat something, right? Tap into something else, then it just makes it less, right? So again, let's say you're having to write your note and you don't want to write the note. Make it put yourself 5 minutes, like give yourself 5 minutes, even 3 minutes before you walk into the next patient's room. Just go to the assessment and plan, write whatever it is. You already told the patient what you were going to tell them. You already did the hard thinking. Tap into that short-term memory, even though you pretend you don't have any. It feels like it sometimes, but trying to recall what you said 20 patients later is kind of hard versus if you just, and then you're forcing your brain to hold on to all this piece of information. And then you just feel dead at the end of the day because you're holding on to 20 pieces of information. And if you didn't do your notes that day and you're trying to do it the next day, and that 5-minute note now takes you 15 or 20 minutes to do because now you're tapping into your long-term information and you have so many things you forgot which Smith or which Garcia said that. Like you don't remember. You can't, you can't. So a timer. Timer is your best friend, whether it's to initiate a task, whether it's to try to complete a task, whether it's just to give you an awareness. I use my timer for my nurse to come and knock on my room 10 minutes into the visit. Am I going to be done? Of course not, especially with primary care physicians. What are you going to do in 10 minutes? But at least that gives me an awareness that maybe I should be putting in some orders. Maybe I should have been doing a physical exam. Like I should kind of have some game plan. Or I would tell the nurse, yes, I need a tetanus shot, or I need a UA, or I need this pharmacy medication or whatever, right? I need this specific item. So it helps me and it helps the patient. The patient knows that the nurse is helping me, and it helps me to know that I need to move on with it because otherwise 45 minutes gone by. I had no idea it's 45 minutes. I really think it's 10. And so
it's so interesting when you bring that up because I think about how many things do I do during the day where I know the milestones, right? And I remember like back in the day when we would take exams, you would know by this question 100, I need to be 3 hours in. Like you would know sort of the like, if I don't reach that, I'm not in a great spot. And so I love that you're bringing us up, like bringing intentionality to that. I can think of the same thing in visits for myself as well, where I know like by this time we need to be wrapping it up. Otherwise we can't make the next appointment. And so I'm aware of that, but like bringing intentionality to that, if that's not automatically part of something that's like that you're used to, how that can be learned. I think that's inspirational really with the timer and everything.
yeah, and I know a lot of people, including myself, sometimes think, but there's no way I can be typing something while I'm talking to the patient, right? There's no way they're going to think I'm not listening. But again, you are very creative. I know you find shortcuts of putting something in short words here and there. You don't have to write the whole paragraph. And if you do want to write the whole paragraph, then after the patient walks out of the room, turn on like Dragon or turn on your Google email and just press the button that records you and start talking. You can talk faster than you can type. Then do that. If you can type faster than you can talk, then do that. Do whatever works for you and don't worry about what your neighbor's doing. Do what works for you because at the end, a lot of us don't ask or advocate for what we need because we're worried about what other people are doing in our clinic. Let them do them and you do you.
Yeah. This is like good even if there are non-doctors listening, right? Because I feel like I know we're going like super niche here on the examples we're giving, but this whole like you stick to what works for you because what I'm also hearing from you, and I know it's from my life too, you might need certain supports that other people don't need is what I'm hearing. And like who cares if you need to have a little timer that's helping you out. I was just showing you, I have like this little circle timer thing where I can kind of like crank it 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. And it's like, if those are the boundaries that you need to stay focused, like for me, it's staying off of social. It's like, I mean, like, oh my God, any day of the week, it can suck me down. And so it's like what you're saying, it's like, if we need a timer, there's nothing wrong with that. Like use the tools that are going to make you successful. So I love that. What's number 3?
Okay, so number 3, I kind of already talked about it here and there, but I didn't give you strategies about it. It's emotional dysregulation, right?
Yes.
So for some people, emotional dysregulation, you don't even know you're having that. Like it's very obvious for everybody looking at you, but it's not so obvious you, right? Because we're not like videotaping ourselves and looking at our face go like, or like we're not looking at ourselves like throwing a hissy fit, right? Everybody hissy fit is different. For some of us, we might be rolling our eyes, or we might start getting passive aggressive, or we might start being rowdy or witchy, right? With the way we're interacting with people. And I mean, again, it goes back to mindfulness. Our self-talk, we ignore it most of the time. I mean, I didn't even know what self-talk. I didn't even know what like I didn't even know emotions were a thing, like honestly, until I discovered coaching. Because what I have been taught was emotions you leave at the door. Like emotions you need to suppress, because if you are like crying or whatever with the patient when you're telling them a diagnosis, like they need to know you have it together before you're giving, like, so there's so many things that we were taught to internalize or put away until later we can, like, and so some of us don't have a good way of interacting with the world. Like some of us don't realize that you get to decide if today is going to be a joyful day. Yes, there's stuff that we cannot control, but you still get to decide what you make of what happened to you, right? Like, and many of us don't realize that you have that control. Like, you can think, oh my God, somebody cut me off. And you can think, like, that's the worst thing ever. Or you can think, well, I hope they get to the destination. Maybe something is happening to them, right? Like, you can interpret it however
Right.
you want. You
Right.
could interpret it like, you don't know if they have a person who's about to deliver. You don't have if somebody's having a stroke. You don't know if like they just got a phone call about something, right? We don't know. But but if it takes 2 seconds, well, again, can I decide? Does anybody want to be cut off? Of course not. But can I make it what I want to make it without automatically allowing my brain to go to, they are here to mess me up, but they are here to like, because that's where our brain goes, right? Like we always make it about me. It's the day that I learned that it was not all about me, that I could not control everybody and the whole world around me. Like it was the most like liberating thing. Like so emotional regulation is the ability for us to interpret whatever it like our emotions, and just look at emotions as a compass, as a way for us to interpret the world, right? So a lot of us, of course, none of us are like, oh, I can't wait to welcome anger in. I can't wait to welcome pain in. I can't wait to, like, there's certain emotions that we kind of want to like push away if we can, but they're all there for a reason. Like if you didn't get depressed or disappointed sometimes, you would not speak up. You would not make stuff change, right? So if you were always 100% happy and joyful, then you wouldn't realize that that is not the norm. You wouldn't realize that, pain is still needed. Because if you have no pain, you might never realize that, there's something there that needs to be evaluated. Like, cholesterol doesn't cause pain until like you had the stroke, right? So for how many years,
So
how
true.
many years did
I've
you?
never thought of this analogy, and you just made it real.
Right? Like, how many years does it take for you to realize that you had that stuff brewing there, right? Like, so sometimes we need to just realize that emotions, they can be your friend, even the bad ones. And of course, some of the worrying, even though we decide that, oh, I'm just going to worry myself to a solution. That never happens. But again, if whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And sometimes all those days and years of worrying about the worst case scenario, when the worst case scenario comes, you would have never imagined that. So, but your brain didn't know. So all along it was releasing cortisol level, adrenaline, right? And so all along it was causing a dysregulation in your state. You were always in high state of alert, right? So how can I self-regulate? Mindfulness. Again, if your brain is always saying you're not enough, and I wish it was just easy to, oh, well, let me have a different thought. It's not that way. I wish it was that way. But what if you say, I am learning to blah, 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 right? Like I am learning to do one or two things at a time. I am learning to embrace my strength. If you say I'm learning to, and even though you haven't arrived where you want to, that self-talk already makes a difference. If in the morning you are mindful of how you wake up, some days it feels like we wake up 100% full energized. Other days we feel like we're just dragging. We don't even want to brush our teeth. We don't even want to brush our hair. We just want to throw on whatever and like, I arrive. What do you want from me? Some days that's the way we show up. So what can you do in days that you're feeling amazing? What can you do on days that you're at 20%? Again, ask yourself, what do I need? Do I need a day off? Do I need food? Do I need to sleep more? Do I need to talk to a friend and just complain about what I feel like I shouldn't have a reason to complain about? Like sometimes we just have to tap into what's going on. And sometimes we do have to talk about it. And it might be that you don't want to talk about it. Okay, can I do tapping? Can I do meditation? Can I go out for a walk for 5 minutes and just be in nature and see how the trees don't care what the flower's doing next to it? Like the tree's gonna do what it needs to, right? And so even though you might have planted a tomato and an orange tree and plants, like they're all gonna blossom at their own timeline, regardless of how or what you think about them, right? And regardless of what water or sun you give them. So emotional regulation can allow you to have a way to interpret the world without you automatically feeling like you should be in control of everything. Like, tapping into gratitude. So there's so many different ways to do the emotional regulate. These are strategies that is not, it could be, like I said, accountability, calling a friend. Like sometimes all you have to do is tell somebody, hey, this that I'm doing is hard. I just wanted you to know about it. Like they might not give you any advice, but in saying it out loud, you normalize it. And even that, and that's where I get very careful with the gaslighting, because sometimes, we all have been told like, well, that's your opinion. Like it's not hard for me, so it might not be hard for you. If it is hard and your brain tells you it's hard, okay, how can I make it less hard? How can I make it simple? How can I make it a little bit less painful if this is something I need to do? Do I really have to do it, or can I delegate this to somebody? Do you really have to do the laundry? Can I just go drop off all the laundry at the laundromat and pay you whatever, because I would rather have 2 days and not for myself instead of 2 days of how long it takes me to do the laundry? Because by the time you get it out, by the time you put it away, can I not cook? Can I just hire somebody to come and give me the food? Or can I just go take out this week because it is what it is? So again, emotional regulation is a tool that if you're not even aware that you can have strategies built in, even when you're not feeling bad, think about it as a micro charge throughout the day, right? Yeah. If before you walk in, keep using examples of physicians, but even if you're not a physician, before you start whatever task you're going to do, can you just take a deep breath? Yeah. Like, can you, between patients, I wash my hands and I try to take a deep breath. I try to be mindful. Before I walk in the next patient room, I try to clear my head and be like, right here, right now, Right here, right now, I'm with this patient. Right here, right now, this is what I'm doing right here, right now. And even when I'm with my kids, I have to purposely tell myself right here, right now, like right here, right now,
Oh, this is so
I
powerful.
am
Yeah.
going to read this book right here, right now. I have to tell myself that because
Yeah.
otherwise my brain's going to think of all these other things. And then I shame myself for like getting distracted instead of thank you, brain, for telling me. And I write it down somewhere and then I go back to it. Right. So
Yeah.
emotional regulation is key. So I think those are the top three that whether you have ADHD or not, it could be helpful. But if you do know somebody with ADHD, if you could at least have this awareness for them or suggest, compassion goes a long way because believe me, most of us don't have self-compassion because that we have never been taught that that could be something we tap into. Most of us are always functioning from fear of letting other people down or letting and never letting ourselves down because we tend to like we don't care. I mean, we do care, but we internalize it differently. But we are always kind of functioning from fear. And but the moment that you let go of that and you realize that it is what it is and you can only do your best, then everything just flows.
Yeah. Okay, it's so many things that came to mind when you were talking about this last part I wanted to actually say something on all three of these because this is actually a lot of what I do with patients, specifically when it comes to metabolic health things. But the last one with emotional regulation made me think. I hear this great quote all the time. We'll make sure to link it down below. I forget if he's a social worker or what he is, but he has a really big channel on Instagram and he talks about how really these emotional regulation things, it's really a daily practice and not an emergency drill. And I was like, every time he posts it, it makes me realize, yes, we don't just do this when we're flying off the handle. We every day need to practice these things. And you gave so many good examples of how it doesn't need to be some long overdrawn thing, but you really need these practices in your life. Otherwise, I always say you feel run over by a bus at the end of the day, right? You're just like, you're so exhausted and spent. And you have like no idea why that happened. I wanted to touch real quick on these though, because when I work with patients with ADHD, again, the things that they tell me the most is that they will forget to eat lunch. Like they're so busy, they're doing other things, just total forgetting to eat lunch. They're very disconnected typically from what their body's actually signaling. So maybe thirst is kind of off. If I'm drinking water, great, but then there might be like whole weekends where it's just like not on the radar, right? So they're not listening to their bodies very much. They're missing meals. Then they're overly hungry. Then they might get fixated on certain foods. So for example, they find something that they love, but then they tire of it because they're having it like every single day for 4 weeks. Well, anyone's going to get sick of it, right? So what's interesting is I use all these strategies that you're talking about. I just have like certain like highlights, if you would. So I love how you brought up planning 1,000,000%. It's like we have no shot at it when you do it the day
Eh,
of.
I'm gonna so that's called hyperfocus. What you just described
Yeah.
is hyperfocus. And so
Yes.
that's where people think when people think of ADHD, they think of they can't focus. But again, if you're in your zone, if you're doing what you like, then you're gonna hyper focus and you're gonna forget everything else, like you said. And go ahead about the planning.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the hyper focus works to your advantage if it's a habit that's helping you, but sometimes it's not. And then we run into a problem, right? So I really want to highlight that. Like, this is actually a coaching client that I just saw earlier today. This person's been wildly successful. They have hyper focused into all of these substitutions with foods that are really working. So it's all high fiber, it's all low calorie. Like everything's been working, but now it no longer works because we actually need this person to stop losing weight. And honestly, that is what we've had to work on. How can we stop hyperfixating on this and actually change things? So it's interesting what in one capacity can be a superpower, sometimes can become detrimental. So to just even understand that you're doing that can be so helpful. So planning, I really work with them on not making it too overwhelming. We're not going to redo your whole day. Okay. It's not going to work. We're going to pick like usually lunch, to be honest, is the area where I'm like, can we, again, the timer comes in there, right? Can we in some capacity not have maybe over a 6 to 8 hour window without eating just because we know the binge happens at night? So we start to look at, I usually have people do a nutrition audit. And what I always see is big parts of the day is no eating. Everything's happening at one time, out of control at that time. So starting to plan out where are some small steps that we can begin. The time blind aspect, it's 100% like they won't know. They'll still be trying to bring things that just need too much prep in scenarios where they have no time. So again, I think with me, it's all about like very slowly working on things. I'm really big into experimenting with all patients, but specifically with ADHD and being like, let's try this week. Does it work? Yes or no? Okay, let's switch it. Why? Right? And we can kind of learn those things. And I think the biggest thing is the emotional regulation part, because I think that people do not realize how exhausting it is to constantly be fighting the fact that they get angry or like not liking the food choices. Like, there's so much resistance to what is or experiencing symptoms. So I'm really big into, I don't use the term emotional regulation a lot. I just, I feel like I'm not evolved enough, but I use the term a lot, grounding. So I basically tell people, look, all of us have stress all day long. And I'm like, how are you continually every day doing something to ground yourself? That's mindfulness that you were saying. So I feel like when I use the word mindfulness, I think it's also like who we're talking to. I think if you're, I feel like the term mindfulness has really like infiltrated the physician community. So we're used to all those kind of terms. But I just tell people like it's like a socket, right? Like we all had that science class where something was like, the little like static thing that you touch and you needed to ground yourself. You weren't just like touching random things. Every day, how are you doing that? Like there is no one nowadays that is not experiencing a life where just stress is through the roof. If you're out there, please identify yourself and why is it? And we want to know. So most people need to kind of come down off of that. I'm a really big fan of like you were saying, like, is it a walk? What is it? Like everyone has their it thing where is it a walk? Is it actually quiet time by yourself? Like for me, that's another thing. Like I'm introverted and I have a kid actually that has ADHD and oh my gosh, the noise, the inputs, mom needs like a 30-minute a sensory break myself. I need to be in another room, hear nothing. I need during my day micro breaks like you're talking about. I actually do planning myself during the day and I write in there like today when we're talking Monday is a very busy day for me and I put in there as many little micro breaks, even if it's a 1 minute walk back and forth in my office. That's actually a goal for me that day. How many of these can we get in so that at the end of the day we're not super overwhelmed? I mean, that's typically how I see it working out most, but I know you had some other good questions about kind of the meds and everything with ADHD.
Yes. So, and this is so important to bring up. If you are using ADHD medications, remember some of them suppress your ability to eat too, right? So if
Totally.
you're already hyper focused and the medication is then suppressing that, depending on what medication you're on, you have to remember not all of them work the same. Some of them are short acting. So after 4 to 6 hours, it's out of your system. Oh, I remember I need to eat now. And all of a sudden you're eating everything, right? But
Yeah.
if you're on a long acting one where it's 8 to 12 hours, then it might be that's why at 5 or 6 you go for that binge.
Totally.
And people don't realize that dopamine is found many ways. And guess what? Food, especially sugar, is one
Yeah.
of those. And
Yeah.
so you'd be surprised, and I'm sure you're not surprised, but because this is our zone, but most people, if they don't put the correlation together that they are using food as a means, food or alcohol or smoking as a means to get their dopamine to help them function, they don't realize their diabetes is or their obesity is because they have unmanaged ADHD. And so
Yeah.
when all of a sudden they get on ADHD medications, guess what? Sometimes they're not eating, their whole day does not revolve around like it did for me about planning, when am I going to eat next? Because the food was what was keeping you in doing the tasks, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so what I have also noticed is that, when you are on a GLP-1, and this is where we both got kind of excited in the conference when we were talking, is that it targets the pineal gland, a part of the brain that helps with regulation, with impulse control. And so you'd be surprised, and I don't know if you've seen it too, how many people quit smoking and drinking when
Yeah.
they start on this GLP, not because they were using it for that, but because again, there's some correlation. So what have you noticed with these two meds or with people who are taking their meds? Have you
Yeah.
noticed any patterns like that?
Yeah. So, okay, I love that you brought up the, decreased smoking and drinking. Like we know all those things, but the big thing that I see as well is decreased urges and cravings for really carb heavy, meaning like sugary foods if you're listening. So things like straight candy, cake, chips, like anything that really turns into a sugar really quickly, we would use the term UPF, ultra processed food. And that's usually the thing that leads to, again, people, like you said, lots of dopamine, lots of serotonin in the gut, lots of things being activated with this, right? Food is a really complex substance. So I really want to highlight that to people that are listening. Not easy overnight to suddenly change everything. But what I see is that the desire to even want those things is decreased. It's so fascinating because I feel like every other day we find out, another thing that it's targeting. But think about the impact that that has on your weight management. If you're not even wanting the fast food anymore, you're not even feeling like what you were talking about. I know a lot of patients will tell me they're using snacks as a way to be like to basically to be with them, to work with them. I'll never forget the first patient I had that explained this to me years ago. And she said to me, listen, I actually need the snack there to sort of keep going during the day. And it was really fascinating because I had to parse out, is this a blood sugar problem? Is this emotional eating? Like, what term am I going to give to it? And it was more what you were talking about than sort of me thinking it was used in other capacities. So it's really fascinating because if you can stop shaming yourself and saying, oh, this is such a problem, and look, I'm doing it, this is active choice, right? Like lots of internalized bias when it comes to weight because everyone's like, I'm making the choice. What if that's not true? What if ADHD is running this? What if there's other things happening? I find with my patients, if we can get them on a GLP-1, and of course there's other medications like Contrave and Vyvanse and other ones, right? So we're just going to talk like GLP-1 for a second. So injection medications here that they are greatly helped by that. And suddenly these really monumental struggles that they're always needing to like really think their way out of, and there's like super huge barriers to not have it in the house and to think about it and to go get it. Suddenly that's decreased and their work gets easier. It's not that they don't have work still, but it gets easier on that front.
Yeah, like I'm telling you from personal experience and also from my patients telling me all the time. But I myself, my weight fluctuated so much between high school, college, med school. You could imagine when you're in high school, I was running, and I mean, I was in the cross country team. And again, maybe that was what was like getting my ADHD to be controlled, right? Because we're not here to say that meds are the only way to control ADHD, but use all the resources and see what works for you and talk to your physician for sure. But for me, exercising was helpful. And then I start college. I don't exercise because I have to study. I thought I have to study 80 hours or 40 hours, whatever, right? And I'm not exercising. And then towards the end of college, I start exercising. I get lose 40 pounds that I gained, right? And then I start a med school. I'm sitting down again, not really studying. I lose a little bit of weight, but not a lot. But then I start running again or start doing different things, and all of a sudden my weight goes down. But again, you don't realize that the weight goes up and down because you're using the food to get you to function, to thrive, to do whatever. And then again, if you're having, I always describe this to people. Let's say you're a patient who has anemia. That means low blood in your body, right? Some of us crave the ice and the stuff on the floor, like the dirt. We want to eat it. Why? Because there's iron there. So your body's asking you to get what you need. And somebody with diabetes, even if you don't have diabetes, but you were overweight, like your body acts like it's insulin resistant. So your body is meant to make insulin to get all that sugar that you just consumed that's in your bloodstream and take it to the rest of the body and work, right? But if there's all this sugar there, there's no way for it to get to where it needs to go. Your body's telling you, hey, we need stuff. Go eat. We need stuff.
Right? Isn't
Right?
that so ironic that like it thinks it doesn't have it, you've got a bunch of it, you're not listening to it. Totally. This is that resistance part, right? But something that you bring up is really good. And I think it's like really being curious, how am I using food? Is it that because there's just very different patterns. It's like, am I always hungry and never satisfied? That's more of like an insulin resistant picture. Is it that I'm using it for attention? Is it that I forget big periods of time? Something that's ironic is, forget GLP-1s for a second, but the other ADHD medications, because I have a lot of patients on that, What's interesting is even though they might not be hungry or again, it's helping in certain ways as far as appetite regulation, they do not have aversion. So majority of them, if we schedule it, can still get a smaller healthy meal in. So what's interesting is sometimes people will tell me, well, like I legitimately would like gag if I try to eat, right? Like they like literally would not be able to. That's usually not the case that I see with not everybody, but like with majority of my ADHD patients. So we can plan a little something so that they're not overly hungry in the evening time when it wears off. So there are strategies that you can use.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I think we can keep talking and talking about this forever, but what would you like to give? Like, what are your top three hits or like takeaways that you would tell your patients? So you said the planning.
Yeah.
What else would you suggest for them?
It's so funny. I think we're talking about the same things. We're gonna end up having the same list. But no, here's my number one tip. You need to learn what your pattern is, and then we slowly adjust it. So I would not recommend doing large corrections because it doesn't end up sticking around. So my number one thing to recommend, let's say that you're working on your relationship with food, maybe you're working on bringing your weight set point down. Number one would be do a nutrition audit. Do not judge and shame. There's no point in that. We're literally wanting to see what you eat, when you eat, and what you drink and when you drink it. So I want to know, are you sipping a latte all morning long? Everything is going to be a clue. So number one, I want you to write it out for 2-3 days, literally just because we want to be a detective about it. Okay, then that number two, once you've done that nutrition audit, the second thing I want you to do is to look at one area that you can up level it and bring in there a planning technique or a timer. So usually it's going to be a forgotten meal or a meal that's entirely carb because you're so low energy in the afternoon. You're always going to the break room. Instead of judging the pattern, I want you to think, why is this happening? Because we only keep doing things because it serves us. Like if I go back 6-7 years in the clinic, when I was doing primary care, there would be all this, I'm just gonna say like all this junk in the break room. Like it was always like cookies and cake and like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how we were like 24/7 supplied with this stuff. It was like a clinic of
Especially at 2 or 3 o'clock, right?
yes. And it was so funny. It would always be there, except the 1 or 2 days when you were really dying and needed something, then it wouldn't be there. But my point is, you would go there because you were exhausted, you were tired, you'd missed lunch, you were like energetically on the floor, maybe your sleep was horrible. Something was going on. And if we can stop judging and just figure out how can I solve for this problem? So that's going to be the planning and the timer part. And then step three is going to be we need to get curious. Things are often not going to work. And instead of making that a problem, can we just get creative with other ideas? So another thing that I see with ADHD patients, when it's too complicated, things fall apart. They don't do well with like 50 ideas. So most of my patients with ADHD, I literally this past week, one of my patients said, listen, I've gotten really sick of lunch. And this person also has a lot of different like food sensitivities and aversions, like textures and different stuff like that. And so literally we went through two things that this person could try out. We didn't give a list of 100. It's too overwhelming for any of us, but also with an ADHD brain. So how can you really pare it down and always get down to there's just one thing I'm going to try? And don't let yourself think that it needs to be 50. Does any of that resonate with you or do you see any of that with your patients?
Yes. Yes, exactly. The more choices we have, we become overwhelmed and we don't choose anything because we cannot decide which one is better to try and we don't want to try the wrong one, so we won't even try, right? So this way, if you gave me two things to try, I can try one that didn't work, I try the other. And that's it. It's two things, not 50 things. If you give me a list with 50 things, I would try none because I don't know which one is the most important one. And I'm going to get fixated in that part. Which one's the best one to start off with?
Exactly. So I'm wondering, this has been such a nice conversation. I feel like I have a million others, but let me ask you to leave. What are your top tips for someone that's starting to work on emotional regulation, figuring out like getting systems differently? I know you went through three things, but do you think there's anything that's like the easiest to start with?
I think the easiest to start with, which you kind of just alluded to, is look for patterns, get curious, become a detective. Don't like pretend that you're walking around with a video camera and following yourself around for 24 hours for a week. where's your time? Where's your energy going? What is making you feel like, oh, I'm in flow? And what is making you feel like I am stuck in the mud and I didn't even know how I got here? If
Yeah.
you can start to find those patterns, then it's easier to be like, oh, can I put a ladder when I'm in the mud?
Yeah.
Right? Right? And or how can I keep myself in flow? Right? And again, just being curious, because when you are able to find patterns, then you cannot unsee those patterns. And now you have the awareness, and then you get to decide, is this something that I want to do, or can I ask for help somewhere so that I'm not so stuck? Or can I work with somebody, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach, whether it's your physician, whether it's a buddy, you just call and say, like, you need to realize that we're in a community. And the more that you tap into that community, like the more that you get to do what you are meant to do in this world, because you come with strengths even though you believe you don't. You have your gifts. How can we make those gifts shine so that you're not stuck in whatever is not your stuff?
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I always think, there's people that get hired, right? Like consultants. They're they pay hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to come into companies and figure things out. And all they're doing is just observing and making reports on what could be different. We can do that for ourselves. Like if you paid yourself $200,000, could you figure it out? I think you could. I think you could if it was high priority, right? So it's just like, but being open and being able to experiment. This was so great today. I'm so glad that we got to have this talk. Can you tell first everybody on my podcast, how can people find you? Tell us about your course. Just tell us all the things, podcast, all of it.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me at Beyond ADHD, a physician's perspective. My website is ADHDlifecoach.com. If you want to come and have a strategy call and see if we can put our heads together, or if maybe you might want to participate in my group, come find me there. I'm kind of active on LinkedIn. You can find me with my name, Diana Mercado-Marmarosh. So yeah, reach out and we can definitely try to put our brains together to work this out. Or if you have a practice, or if you have, you're looking for somebody to come talk to your whole program so that it doesn't seem like it's just about you, we can definitely make something happen as well. Now, can you tell my listeners where they can find you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to learn more about how all this metabolic stuff is connected with ADHD.
Yeah, first of all, you read my mind because I was like, well, you need to come into my clinic. You know how I bring a specialist in every so often. I'm like, future talk. I know I already talked to you about this. I am actually on all social, most active on TikTok and Instagram, Rentea MD. So again, we'll have probably all the links below everything. So that's where I make a lot of videos, a lot of content. The best way to find me is renteaclinic.com. So I have a clinic that serves metabolic health for Indiana and Illinois, but I also have on there a lot of resources if you don't live in those states. So there are different programs that I run several times a year, different coaching sessions, things that I can help support your metabolic health, even if you're not under my medical care. So obviously I wouldn't write a medication for you, but I hate to say it. One of the main reasons I got out there to have a podcast, The Obesity Guide with Rentea MD, it's because this education doesn't exist enough. Same with what you're doing, right? And so we won't be able to work with everyone, but at least in some capacity, there's good education, or you can get this information so you can ask your doctor the questions that you need to. I think in a lot of the same spirit that you have, I just wanted people to be able to learn about this stuff, even if they couldn't work with me.
I think that's why we clicked, because we're here talking about what seems so obvious to us, but it's not so obvious for everybody else. And unfortunately, we found out about it because we had to help ourselves along the way.
Yes.
And so we're here to help you advocate for yourself so that everybody wins, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wins.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so great. And I'm so excited for everyone to get to learn all of this. That marks the end of today's episode. But if you're newer to the podcast, I want to tell you about something that we have, and it's a free podcast roadmap. So this is perfect for any of you that are listening where you want to be directed to very specific episodes. So let's say that you are just starting out and you want to know, what should I do right when I start on the medications? Or you're experiencing certain side effects on the GLP-1s, or you want to know what to do if you're in a plateau, or if emotional eating is taking over, or if hunger levels are high. So we have many different categories of episodes that we've talked about, because there's a lot at this point. So if you want to be able to navigate that very easily, we have it broken down by category, and also the episodes that are there, and we hyperlink to everything. So you can just click on it and find the episode, easy peasy. If you want that, you can go to renteaclinic.com/podcast roadmap. We'll have it linked right here underneath the show notes where you're listening. And you can go ahead and get that free resource so that it makes it easy for you to navigate, because I know that it's really hard when someone has an established podcast. I am such a podcast fiend. I'm listening to podcasts all day long. And when I find one that I love, but there's a lot that are out there, I am so lost. So I hope that you enjoy this free podcast roadmap. Again, the link to get to that is going to be renteaclinic.com/podcast roadmap. I hope this is helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.